I'm glad you've chosen this study on environmental justice and what our Christian faith might have to say about it. I'm Patricia Tull. I'm a biblical scholar retired from Louisville Presbyterian Seminary in Louisville. Those of you who've been participating in Horizons Bible Studies for a while might remember my 2001 to 2002 study, Esther's Feast. Writing Esther's Feast was a delight, not only because the book of Esther is so interesting in itself, but also because I enjoyed traveling around teaching about the study and getting to know Presbyterian women all over the country. So I was very glad to be invited to write this year's study on environmental justice. I've been writing and teaching in environmental theology for nearly 20 years. In 2013, I published a book with Westminster John Knox called Inhabiting Eden, Christians, the Bible, and the Ecological Crisis, and also created a leader's guide and a workbook to go with it. These supplements are only available from me directly, so contact me if you're interested. Inhabiting Eden was my first full-length foray into writing environmental Bible studies. As that book approached its 10th anniversary last year, people began asking me if I would write a sequel and what such a sequel might be. So everything converged on writing this study, which bears the long but descriptive title, Let Justice Roll Down, God's Call to Care for Neighbors and All Creation. How is this study like and unlike Esther's Feast? Esther's Feast focused entirely on the biblical book of Esther, retelling the story, highlighting its keen wit and its many ironic twists, as well as the tragedy of violence against women and minority ethnic groups, violence that was sometimes cunning and mean-spirited, and sometimes simply thoughtless and stupid. In the story of Esther, nearly everyone gets what they deserve, for better or for worse. Esther's Feast was completely focused on Bible study per se, and while it managed to lasso in a lot of contemporary questions, it wasn't about us. It was about Esther and her story. Let Justice Roll Down draws connections between Scripture and the many ecological problems we're experiencing today, and zeroes in specifically on environmental justice. We humans have a lot of insight from science to help us live more harmoniously on the earth. People of faith, in particular, have a heritage of viewing nature as God's creation and ourselves as bearing responsibility both to it and to our neighbors. What we are still needing as a society is the will to make the changes we need to make. That's where asking together what the Bible has to say to us becomes helpful. There aren't any shortcuts. As we take seriously what it means to be intelligent beings living in God's awesome and fragile creation, depending upon it, contributing to its health, living at peace with it and with one another, the more we take that seriously, the richer and happier our own lives will be. This is not about giving something up. It's about becoming fuller versions of who we were made to be. When I began writing Inhabiting Eden, I wasn't 100% sure I could fill a whole book with the relationship between Scripture and contemporary environmental challenges. But the more I wrote, the more I saw that Scripture has much more to say about this earth and its members than we have traditionally given it credit for. Similarly, when I agreed to write this study, I wasn't sure how it would go. I cherished the process of putting the pieces together and making sense of them, and I hope you will enjoy this process too. And I hope that what you learn will inspire you to join others in finding ways that we as Christians can honor God and our neighbors by helping make this world a cleaner, safer place for all to flourish in. Here is the Bible study's plan. There's a brief introduction, as there always is. Then, as usual, 9 lessons. In Lesson 1, Environmental Justice, We will examine a passage from the book of the prophet Ezekiel that offers Scripture's clearest image of environmental damage that harms other people. We will also examine the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's definition of environmental justice and a brief history of churches engaging the problem of environmental racism. The next 4 lessons deal with the broad spheres that surround us, each of which presents its own justice issues: land, and with it food, water, and air. Lesson 2, Land Justice, asks who has the right to live securely on their land. For this, we will look back to Israel's founding documents in the Pentateuch. Lesson 3 is titled Food Justice. For the most part, without land we are without food, but abundance flourishes wherever nature has allowed its place. The story of the manna in the wilderness and the corresponding commandments at Mount Sinai make clear what biblical writers understood about food justice. Lesson 4 is water justice. The Bible begins with 3 story arcs that typify what water means to humans and how water can go awry. The first begins with an earth covered in water. The second begins with a dry earth. And the third offers an early version of water pollution. Lesson 5 is air quality. We will discuss the absolute necessity of clean and healthy air and the connections in Scripture among air, wind, breath, and spirit. What we understand about air's vital sacredness brings into question the inevitability of the air pollution we experience today that sickens too many people. Having discussed a variety of forms of local environmental injustice, we will turn in lessons 6, 7, and 8 to various dimensions of the global climate crisis. First, in lesson 6, climate change, using Jesus' story of the rich man who stored up grain for himself without regard to others, we will talk about the folly of pretending that we are invincible. In lesson 7, economic climate justice, we'll talk about the concept of Jubilee in the book of Leviticus and what we owe as a rich nation to those who did not cause the problem of climate change, but do suffer its worst consequences. In lesson 8, intergenerational justice, we'll talk about the responsibilities we bear to future generations. Like the writers of Scripture, we are writing our own story while we are living it. The final lesson, Sustaining Creation's Health for All, explores the world Scripture encourages us to help create, one in which all creation and all neighbors flourish. To get the most out of this study, I strongly encourage each participant to read and ponder the lessons before your group meets, and to take seriously the reflection questions provided at the end of each lesson. And try the action items. The study is blessed by the fine suggestions for leaders that were written by the Reverend Rebecca Barnes, who is the coordinator of the Presbyterian Hunger Program and a tireless environmental advocate, and I think you will find them invaluable. Art for this study is provided by Ontario fabric artist Lorraine Roy. I look forward to hearing back from your group what this study means to you and what you do with it.